Hi, I'm Joey Waronker, and I'm standing in my backyard in front of my studio, and I'm inviting you in. I'm going to start with my tour over here with some percussion stuff that's near and dear to my heart. Actually, this turpentine can is kind of like a thunderclap sounding material, and I've used that so much over the last decades of recording stuff, and even I think I even used it live. There's handmade stuff, things that I've gotten from other percussionists, stuff I bought in Brazil. Try to keep it organized so when I'm recording I can just kind of easily go for it. And then oh yeah, some hand drums, amazing drum maker in Sao Paulo made for me. Got my Simmons electronic stuff I like to use, and a big fish that my son made for like a school project in 5th grade, I think. I first got into drumming as a really little kid, but I just did it on my own. You know, did the whole like set up pillows and pots and pans. And my uncle gave me my first drum lesson. He is still a working drummer. He gave me records to play along to that he thought I would be interested in, and the main one being Led Zeppelin 4. He gave it to me thinking, you know, it'd just be fun to even just to listen to. And he came back the next week and I played it from top to bottom perfectly, like learned all the parts. I remember being like so inspired by it. I don't know how, but I remember figuring out the fast triplety fill. I think it was 8. I was just able to hear it and do it. The way he puts it, he barely taught me anything. But I will say the big thing that he did was that I was trying to play on my own for years, and I'm left-handed. And I was very frustrated. There was something wrong, and I would like go over to friends' houses and sit on the drum set and just somehow not be able to do it. And he kind of saw that I was orienting everything left-handed. So he literally took the drum set and switched it to lefty. Then I was able to cruise. I was quickly like playing with other people, you know, like school play, and with friends we would, you know, set up instruments and at someone's house. That was really the outlet. The first bands were always covers, tiny little kids. And then in junior high school, I was in like a cover band, but then I had a crazy event when I was, I guess, 14. A neighbor heard me. I had a drum set in the garage, and he just went into the garage and was shocked to see what, you know, it's like, whoa, that's a kid playing that. And he basically recruited me to play in his bands. And so in LA, there was so much crazy music going on at the time, and he was playing in a Western swing band, which was, you know, music that was popular in the 40s. There were bands in the 80s in LA like X and Los Lobos, and reviving old music like this. He like basically asked my dad if it'd be okay if I played in the band. My dad was like, you know, that's insane. As a kid, he loved Western swing music. Like, it was just sort of in the air. But he took me to see them play, and the venue was like an old deli that had shows. The deli was called Gorky's, and even though it was, you know, in Hollywood, and it's like, well, if the shows are early enough, this is kind of a, you know, a charming place, like, sure, why not? So I was already working as a professional drummer before I could drive. The turning point for me where I actually started to get more serious about it, more like 17 or 18. I had taken these initial lessons with my uncle when I was, you know, quite young. Tried to get lessons after that, and just never really had the discipline to do it. And I kind of never really took it seriously. I think I was having some sort of an teenager identity crisis. And it was like, well, wait a minute, looking at my life, wait a minute, this is a thing that works. Like, why am I not considering this? I actually looked Jim Keltner up in the phone book, and I called him. And after a week, he called me back. And he said, look, I don't really give lessons. It's not my thing, but I'm going to recommend a teacher. He recommended Freddie Gruber. At the time, no one knew who he was, but I called Freddie Gruber and I went over there and studied with him on and off for several years. And that was a huge turning point. The lessons were crazy. A year of just how to sit in the stool and like how to hold the sticks, but I didn't even hit a drum pad for like a year. And I just went with it, and I thought he was an amazing character, and I sort of saw the genius. He's like the Yoda or something. He had me like sitting like this, and I'd, sort of fine tune it, sit, and then like hold the sticks in my hands and like do this motion and be like, nope, not, go back one more week. It's very like wax on, wax off style for an entire year. And then it would be like, okay, we're getting somewhere, like your posture. I mean, I did have to develop probably the muscles to do that. And like, can you lift your feet while you're sitting on the stool? And like, I remember the first time it was like, whoa, I can't do that. That's crazy. But yeah, he had his own version. If you went with him, he was going to get you there. And then if you got there, he took people to shredder level. I never got it close to that. Like each limb, you could do odd time signatures. I probably got through like phase 5 of 20. The teaching style was crazy. It was like, I'd show up at like 6 p.m. I was still in school, so I was 17. And then like students would start showing up after me, but it was like all these kind of great drummers. I remember the first time I kind of got mad. I was like, hey, I'm like a kid. Like I have homework. I'm a senior in high school. It's like, I can't be here till midnight on a weeknight. And he was like, well, what do you think I'm doing? You're watching Ian and like all these amazing people. Like that's part of your thing, man, because I know you're going to soak it up. However he meant it, he was 100% correct. There we go. Turn all the gear on. Yeah, and then I just sort of set the space up to record different drum sounds and different percussion. And at some point I was doing a lot of production stuff as well, so it was set up that way, but it's morphed into recording drums. And so like started simple, and now I have, I think, I won't count all of them, but I think it's 40 mic pre's, 40 channels of inputs. And that allows me to have kind of everything set up and ready to go all the time. Most of my mic pre's are older stuff that I love and that I've been collecting for years, and some new stuff that I love. I had a college band in the Midwest, and we were kind of like a promising band at the time. Somewhere along the way, I met Beck, and my sister was also like friendly with him, and she's a musician. Her band was playing with him in LA, and so after college I moved back to LA, and I ended up playing with him, and that sort of, I think that was the beginning of like, oh yeah, this is what I'm doing now for sure. And I played on B-sides for Mellow Gold, but Mellow Gold had already been recorded. Loser was already a phenomenon. It was a solid 5 years. From then until now, it's been off and on. Well, being in LA, the first gig that felt like, wow, this is huge, was John Doe from X. Of course, my college band, Walt Mink, is what it was called. And then Beck, and got to record a little bit with Liz Phair. Smashing Pumpkins, REM for 5 years, records that I played on. Johnny Cash stands out. With Beck, we played with Willie Nelson. Oh yeah, and then Roger Waters. We had Atoms for Peace, the band Atoms for Peace, with my friend Mauro Rafosco, who's an amazing musician, percussionist. And then we made a record together called Joe Moreau. Atoms for Peace was Thom, Nigel Godrich, who's like my really close friend, and we collaborate together forever. Nigel and I were doing a band that ended up being called Ultraista with our friend Laura Bettinson. I got to record once in tandem with Jim Keltner, and a bunch of times actually with James Gatson, who's another one of my heroes. I have a lot of like respect for my sort of like drummer elders. I love that. Atoms for Peace was so fun, and it came at a time in my development of my playing where I was really, really open to kind of being as experimental as possible. And I guess at the time I was more into what was going on with electronics, or the idea of blending electronics and live stuff. And then the idea for me was, how do I make a live drum set that sounds more like you can't tell if it's live or electronic sounds. Was trying to be super, old school about it. So I actually started with like Simmons pads and my Simmons, which was the worst idea ever. I mean, it sounded amazing, but the first show we played, it died. I don't know how to describe the aesthetic of Thom and Nigel, but creatively, I felt sort of in line with it. Whatever feedback they were giving me, it was really fun. It would be fun inspiration, or they'd say like, hey, I wish we had that stick sound from the Eraser. How can I do that acoustically? And came up, found whatever, like a wooden box, and figured out a way to mic it, and it sort of was doing that and stuff like that. You kind of like rewrite things as we're getting older and remembering things, but I have a very distinct memory of the first bunch of sticks that I had were like sticks that my uncle probably brought over. I don't know what model, but I'm convinced that they were ProMarks. So I was playing already with a Western swing band and doing all this stuff when I was young. So one of the things that I keyed in on when I was young and I didn't have technique was like, oh, okay, with the Western swing band, I have to have tiny drumsticks because that's going to be way easier to play quiet. I would go between like brushes and these tiny sticks, and I know that I had a pair of ProMark sticks that I've like obsessed on and tried to like, what were they? And I remember like the numbers, they were always called by, not 7A, but like 727. I just remember going to like Pro Drum Shop in Hollywood and trying different sticks and being like, oh yeah, this will feel good for this, oh, I'm doing this weird blues gig in this club and I'm 16 and I have to make the backbeat really loud and I'm not, oh yeah, this feels great. I've kept a lot of my old sticks, but that's my like childhood, like when I pick them up, and I know a lot of them are the same design. My two that I'm keep gravitating towards are the Oak 727s and the 7A Classics. And I like the Oak and the Hickory, and I can't tell which I like more. The 727 to me is actually like, at first I was like, oh, this is a perfect live stick and for heavier recording stuff, and now as I'm getting used to it, I'm like, oh yeah, I'm figuring out it allows me to play more precisely than I'm used to being able to play. And yeah, I don't feel the need to like switch sticks around as much as I generally have throughout my playing career. People love to get me to do super light things, so for the light things, the 7A Hickories seem to be like, they just do the job. And then in the studio when I'm playing light, there's something about the Oak that makes me feel like I can be really precise, that I'm drawn to. So I keep kind of going there. Some engineers really love when you play with these lighter, smaller sticks. I think it's about pushing gain on mic pre's and how drum sounds just will be more forward and punchy, and that the actual trick is like when you're not playing quite as hard. I mean, not necessarily aggressive, but just punchy and forward sounding. So like, since I'm in that, like recording like that a lot, I've had producers who shall go nameless, like that's another ProMark story where I think it was those same small tiny sticks that I just bought. Play with these, it's like, you know, trying not to say anything and hoping they're not seeing me roll my eyes, but then I'm like, oh yeah, this sounds different. And I see it's have a more focused, tighter sound on cymbals. And the drums are like super weird sounding. It's almost like I'm playing with pencils or something. And then you walk into the control room and you're like, wow, how is that possible? And you're like, oh yeah, it's because mic pre's are just absolutely on stun, and there's distortion and compression happening, and it just makes things have a certain sound that you don't get otherwise. This is a drum set that I got in Brazil. The company is called Pinguim. I love them. They're just the Brazilian drum maker, and I think they're probably from the 50s. It's just a fantastic jazz sounding drum set. I'm always trying to like organize my percussion instruments in a way where they're super accessible, and maybe I can even like just quickly throw a mic up and do stuff. So I've got a nice sort of rock kit set up in this area to get like a nice live drum sound. I switch it out if I need different things, but this right now particularly is like a 80s Gretsch kit that's just sort of like a great diverse rock kit. It's, yeah, so easy to work with. As a kid, I had the idea that I would be like John Bonham in a rock band. I mean, not like John Bonham as a person maybe, but that, you know, oh, I'm gonna be in a rock band. I also had this other side, which maybe comes from my childhood and how I grew up in LA, and my family's in the music business. I had a deep-seated respect for studio musicians, really, and I think that I was able to develop that, and it just started happening. I never pursued it. I mean, the only thing I can say is like early on, I was asked to record with people, and then someone fired me, and my reaction to that was like, oh wow, I have to improve and figure this out. I'll never forget it. It was like probably 24 years old and probably not confident, and probably also like the session wasn't going well. I was probably reacting to that discord, and then I think I've learned recording can be stressful. The red light goes on, so to speak, and you sort of suddenly become self-conscious or second guess yourself. And so I think I was still developing that. Even if I wasn't like, you know, fired for doing something terrible, the effect was like, oh yeah, I have to be way more confident and get my act together and like take this as an opportunity to learn. Ultimately figured out how to, you know, be calm and like pay attention and be neutral. Know to ask questions, but know when it's appropriate. And I think I'm lucky, like I figured out etiquette. I have that natural ability. One of the first sessions I did with a band called Remy Zero, when I sort of like invented my own system. I just kept doing it and got really good at it. And then one of the Freddie things was like practicing while you're counting. I had developed that, and I think for the kind of, you know, bouncing around and learning tons of stuff really quickly, like being able to count it's harder than it sounds, but you know, you're just counting like, oh, it's 8 bars, now I'm gonna change. That skill early on was a big deal because suddenly the word gets around like, oh, that guy, he's young and he's kind of, but like he learns the song like immediately, and you can tell him stuff and he'll remember it. I think I remember that being like a thing in the early days. I was coming in a lot, and without naming names, but there would be a lot of like, we had legendary whoever in here, and they wouldn't take our feedback basically, and be like, okay, well, what happens if I do that? If someone said, hey, why don't you like give me a second to like, settle in and try my own thing. I quickly figured out in a recording scenario, that's okay if you're the artist, but like as a supporting musician, you might need to do that, but you have to figure out a way to do that without disrupting the causes to like get a good recording of a song and for it to be as direct as possible. To have everyone, doing like kind of acting that way I just watched how that would upset the recording sessions. So, at least in my opinion. Playing with Beck was also, I think, such a big education for me, because as like basically a rock drummer who also had respect for the sort of legacy of studio, like well-rounded musicians. And also I was really interested in eclectic music. I loved all different styles of music, and I think it was in the air at the time. And Beck had figured it out how to sort of do that, like how to play all these disparate genres into one package. So I was like really thrilled to be playing with him. I didn't want to just play one style, but like suddenly hip hop, folk, blues, and then, whatever was feeling modern at the time, like the indie sort of post-punk and kind of everything else. That was kind of where it started, but it forced me to learn different styles and genres, and also I think really most importantly for me was the sounds. I need to somehow have a 70s breakbeat drum set, a 60s like psychedelic open rock kit, and a modern kit, and maybe even like drum machine sounds all in one little package in order for the show to sound cool. We could put stuff on track, but we weren't, when we were playing to tracks, but we were also like, if we play it live, it's gonna have another level of excitement, at least at that time, that we just believed in, and it obviously, it worked at the time. So playing with Roger was cool. Nigel mentioned that he was going to do a record with Roger and invited me to come along. And so for that process, we were just kind of doing our thing, really. And then I had no expectation of him asking the band from that studio to go on tour. And I think it was just a sense of needing to shake things up. I loved that at the time, because all of my experience gets to go into however I'm going to approach this. I really prepared and came up with my own idea of how it should be, and really wanted to pay homage because I love the music, and I just thought there's got to be a way to do this where there's a sense of keeping it pure, but obviously I'm going to have to develop my own style. And Roger was very much like, you got to make it your own, and he was so right. And getting to go through the process of learning things with him. I would say the best example is there's a song called Time. I went to the trouble to transcribe it. You can't transcribe it perfectly because it's recorded in sections. They were doing a combination of tuning the rototoms, which were the prototypes, so they're not really as tunable as what we know to be rototoms. And I think they were also messing with tape speed so that they were getting different pitches. So yeah, brilliant, just so brilliant. I can maybe get away with 5 or 6 of these drums set up. So I transcribed it for 5, I think. And I remember I played it and everyone was like, And that sounded perfect. And, you know, Roger was cool, and then we played it again, and he was like, I know you can transcribe it, but you have to make it your own. It can, sure, okay, it can be in this style, but you have to add things. And I totally got that also, because it was like, no one's playing the same thing twice anyway, and how, you know, how to approach it and be kind of experimental and psychedelic. But I had to find something that also like resonated with Roger. Getting to play with Oasis is another thing where I feel like I've been preparing my entire life for this, really. I created over here like a super dead little nook, made the tent, which we so often like do this in, you know, the studio, like in, you know, commercial studios. This one over here, you know, just getting the ambience of the room, so it's more like a medium thing. And then I've got these Blaemire fiberglass concert toms and a tiny little kick drum that actually sounds bigger than it looks. This is for my son, who's 12. This is the kit that he practices on. It's an old, crazy Gretsch with no bottom heads, but it's from the 60s, which to me doesn't make sense, but it's a Chico Hamilton kit. He loves taking drum lessons, but he's really into making tracks, like really good at it with FL Studios. For me, I just love that he's doing something creative and enjoying it. Makes me proud. It's fun to like walk by his room and be like, oh, what are you listening to? He's like, oh, I've just made this, you know, it's really cool.